Greetings. A warm welcome to all of you, my dear sisters and brothers and my dear friends. Sifting out God's love. This is Reverend Yeti. Our fifth evening with God. Growing in the love of God, or attuning ourselves to God's will, is a movement between consolation and desolation. It is because life swings between moments of chance and decisions. Life is an ebb and flow of relationships between persons and between creatures and God. And the change and decisions, while consolations provide comfort and support, life in God is not a lifetime guarantee of warm, cozy feelings. The life of Jesus Christ's significance to us that the path to God is narrow and often winding and dangerous. If any want to become my followers, Jesus said, let them deny themselves and take up their cross daily and follow me. Life in God is risky. Death is involved and trust isn't needed. How do we come to life in the presence of God? That is in God's will, with the cross at the center of our lives. We come to life in God's will through faith in God's incomprehensible love for us, hope in things unseen, and love as a desire to live in the good. Each day must be a choice for God anew. To choose God each day is to grow as wheat among the weeds of the world. It is to persevere in love, despite the forces that prevail against us. In the Gospel of Matthew, Jesus tells us that life is a mixture of weeds and wheat. The kingdom of heaven may be compared to someone who sowed good seed in his field. But while everybody was asleep, an enemy came and sowed weeds among the wheat, and then went away. So when the plants came up and bore grain, then the weeds appeared as well. And the slaves of the householder came and said to him, Master, did you not sow good seed in your field? Where then did these weeds come from? He answered, An enemy has done this. The slave said to him, Then do you want us to go and gather them? But he replied, No, for in gathering the weeds you would uproot the wheat along with them. Let both of them grow together until the harvest, and at harvest time, I will tell the reapers, collect the weeds first and bind them in bundles to be burned, but gather the wheat into my barns. Matthew chapter 13, verses 24 to 30. While the wheat and weeds may refer to types of people in the world, they may also refer to the fields of our own inner lives. We desire the good, but we may find ourselves choosing other than the good. The wheat of our virtues, trust, humility, gratitude, zeal, could not come to full maturity without the weeds of our intellectual failings. Our goodness and desire for holiness is mixed with selfish love until we can learn to purify our hearts of self-centeredness, release our need for control, and allow ourselves to be completely dependent on God. The pure of heart look down on the things of earth while seeking the things of heaven. We do not have to be in a monastery to attain purity of heart, but we do need to be in the cave of our heart to seek God. It is from here we can begin to see the world with the eyes of love. Discernment is a spiral of love. Life is shaped by the end you live for. You are made in the image of what you desire. The problem with desire in today's world is twofold. Desires tend to be superficial and demand immediate satisfaction. Most of us do not know our deepest desires or mistakes, unfulfilled ones for deeper longings. Unfulfilled ones leads to unbridled ones, and we find ourselves yearning after things we don't really want or need. What we fail to realize in our consumer culture is that desire is not meant to be controlled by fulfillment. Rather, desire is the most honest indicator of what our lives are about. Desire is born of the Spirit and thus is God's gift to us, luring us into the fullness of life. Desire is not born of need but of grace. That is why desire is the pulse of our lives, because it is the pulse of our hearts. Desire directs our lives in their deepest longings. If our desires are misguided, so too will the choices of our lives be misguided. Desire requires honest, attentive listening to our inner hearts, where we discover what we hope for and what will transform our lives. Desire awakens us every morning of a new day. Choosing God is a daily act of desire when our hearts are directed toward God. Each moment of our lives must be a choice for God. It may seem unreasonable to choose God at every moment when our lives are filled with many things to think about, things to do. How do we attain God-centeredness instead of self-centeredness? So the only way to God-centeredness is through practice. We must learn to practice God. This is another way of saying that we need a God consciousness, which comes about through prayer, breathing in God, and a mindfulness of God, which expresses itself in love. Spirituality is a transformation of consciousness from self-consciousness toward God consciousness. That is, toward a divine other to whom we belong and in whom we find our fulfillment. We might describe the spiritual life as refocusing our ego toward God. The I of the self is no longer centered in the self, but in God. When we practice God daily, we live discerning lives. We live with an inner peace or consolation, knowing that times of desolation are times of trial, are signals to orient ourselves to God in a new direction. Discernment becomes integral to the daily practice of loving like God when we begin to harvest the wheat of our lives, even though weeds may still grow within us. God becomes part and parcel of our lives, and desire keeps us yearning for every greater closeness to the one who is intimately near to us. The movement of perpetual growth of the soul, or the Greek word for this, epektasis, that helps us understand discernment as constant choice for life in God. Epektasis expresses the soul's constant motion forward as it forgets what is past and continually opens the new graces. The soul is conceived as a spiritual universe in eternal expansion toward the infinite source of love. On one hand is a certain contact with God, a real participation and divinization. But God, who is infinite love, remains constantly beyond, and the soul must always go out of itself. It must continually go beyond the stage it has reached to make a further discovery. Thus each individual stage is a glory, but the brilliance of each stage is always being obscured by the new glory. The soul moves from glory to glory. The soul's security is in change. Change is the mark of spiritual growth, whereas sin is the ultimate refusal to grow. Each new state of spiritual growth is the development of a reality that is entirely new. The journey into God is like a spiral. Every stage of growth in the soul is an absolute beginning, or we might say, every end is a beginning, and every arrival is a new departure. In this way, discernment is not something we do at stages of our lives or at the crossroads of life's changes. Rather, discernment is the way we live in God, in the dynamic movement of the soul's deepest desire. When life presents a series of choices, the compass of our lives should always be pointed in the same direction, toward God, so that whatever concrete decision we make will ultimately have God at its center. Let me give some reflection questions. What are the weeds and the wheat in my life? Do I practice discernment as a way of living in God? Am I patient with myself as I seek to live in God's love? In which direction is my life pointed? Weeds or wheat? May the Holy Spirit guide you. May He give you insight and wisdom, knowledge, to listen and to be centered in God's center. Blessings.